Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
There are some movies that immediately catch your attention because of their title, and The Last House is one of those films. Even before knowing what the complete story is about, the title itself creates a strange sense of curiosity. A house is normally supposed to represent safety, family, and a place where people can escape from the outside world. But when a movie calls it The Last House, that idea suddenly feels much darker. It makes you wonder what happened there, why this particular house matters, and most importantly, who is going to make it out alive. The Last House is positioned as a 2026 Hollywood movie, and the project has already created interest among viewers who enjoy mystery, suspense, and darker thriller stories. One of the biggest reasons for that interest is the basic concept surrounding the film. Instead of giving everything away immediately, the movie appears to build its story around a location that holds much more importance than it first seems. The house is not simply a background for the characters. It feels like a central part of the mystery, and that gives the entire project an unsettling atmosphere. When a thriller is built around one main location, the filmmakers have to make that environment interesting enough to keep the audience watching. A house can look completely ordinary during the day, but the same place can feel completely different at night. A hallway can become threatening. A locked door can create questions. Even a simple sound coming from another room can make the audience start wondering what is actually happening. That kind of atmosphere can be extremely effective when the story takes its time and allows the tension to grow naturally. The cast is another major part of the movie's appeal. A story like this depends heavily on its characters because the audience needs to believe their fear, confusion, and decisions. When a character walks into a dangerous situation, viewers need to understand why they are there and what they have to lose. If the performances feel believable, even a quiet scene can become intense. Instead of relying on constant action, the actors can create tension simply through their expressions, reactions, and conversations. The central characters appear to be connected to the mystery surrounding the house, and that immediately raises several questions. Is someone hiding something? Is the house connected to an event from the past? Are the characters actually safe once they enter it? And perhaps the biggest question of all is whether the danger comes from the house itself or from someone who is already inside. This is where The Last House has the potential to become more than a standard thriller. The strongest mystery movies don't simply ask the audience to watch what happens. They encourage viewers to create their own theories. Every small detail can suddenly feel important. A strange conversation, an unexplained object, or even a character behaving differently can make you question what you previously believed. The plot appears to revolve around a situation that gradually becomes more dangerous as the characters discover more about their surroundings. At the beginning, things may seem manageable. The characters have a reason for being there, and there is no immediate indication that they are walking into something much bigger. But as the story progresses, that sense of security begins to disappear. One of the most interesting elements of a story like this is the transformation from normality into danger. The audience gets comfortable with the characters and their surroundings before the movie begins taking that comfort away. A door that seemed unimportant suddenly matters. A person who appeared trustworthy starts acting suspiciously. Information that seemed harmless begins to change the entire situation. And once the characters realize that something is wrong, leaving may not be as simple as it sounds. That is where the title becomes even more interesting. If this really is The Last House, what does last actually mean? Is it the final safe place? The last place someone visits? Or is there a deeper meaning connected to the story? A good thriller can use a simple title to hide a much larger idea, and that is exactly the kind of question that can keep viewers interested before they even watch the full movie. The release of a movie like this also depends heavily on how the studio chooses to present it. For a mystery thriller, revealing too much in the marketing can completely damage the experience. The best trailers often give viewers enough information to understand the basic situation while keeping the most important answers hidden. That creates curiosity without destroying the mystery. The trailer information surrounding The Last House is therefore particularly important for audiences who want to know what kind of movie they are getting. Rather than treating the trailer as a complete explanation of the story, it is better to look at the atmosphere, characters, locations, and small clues that the marketing reveals. A few seconds of footage can sometimes tell us more about the tone of a film than an entire plot description. From the material associated with the project, the biggest attraction is clearly the mystery. The movie seems designed to make the audience ask questions rather than immediately provide answers. That can be a strong approach for a thriller because viewers become part of the investigation. You're not simply waiting for the characters to discover the truth. You're trying to figure it out alongside them. Another important factor is pacing. A 2-hour movie needs more than one mystery to keep the audience engaged. The story has to evolve. The characters need to discover new information, relationships need to change, and the danger has to become more serious. If everything stays exactly the same for too long, even an interesting premise can lose its impact. The Last House has an opportunity to avoid that problem by gradually expanding the mystery. The house can reveal one secret, which leads to another question, which then creates an even bigger problem. That kind of storytelling gives the audience a reason to keep watching because every answer creates another mystery. The characters themselves can also become part of that uncertainty. In a thriller, you cannot always assume that everyone is telling the truth. Someone may know more than they admit. Someone else may be hiding their real intentions. And sometimes the person who appears to be the victim may actually be connected to the events in a way the audience doesn't expect. That uncertainty is what makes stories like this so entertaining. As the movie moves forward, the tension can become increasingly personal. At first, the characters may simply want to understand what is happening. Later, their goal can become much simpler: survive, escape, and uncover the truth before it is too late. Once the story reaches that stage, the house is no longer just a mysterious location. It becomes a trap. And that's when every decision matters. A character choosing to open a door, follow a sound, trust another person, or investigate something that should probably be left alone can completely change what happens next. These moments are often what separate an average thriller from a memorable one. For audiences who enjoy movies built around secrets, isolated locations, psychological tension, and unexpected discoveries, The Last House has an intriguing setup. It doesn't need to depend entirely on explosions or huge action sequences. Its biggest weapon can simply be uncertainty. The question is not only what is inside the house. The real question is why the characters were brought there in the first place. And once that question becomes important, the story can begin revealing that what we see on the surface may be very different from what is actually happening underneath. As the story continues, the mystery surrounding the house becomes harder to ignore. What initially looked like a strange situation begins to feel like something that has been carefully planned. The characters are no longer dealing with a simple problem that can be solved by walking away. Every discovery connects to something else, and the deeper they go, the more difficult it becomes to separate the truth from deception. This is where the movie can really start playing with the audience's expectations. In a good mystery thriller, the first explanation is rarely the complete explanation. Just when you think you've figured out what is happening, another piece of information can completely change the picture. A character who looked suspicious may turn out to be protecting someone. A person who appeared innocent may have a hidden connection to the house. Even the reason for entering the property can become questionable. That kind of storytelling gives the audience something to think about throughout the movie. The central mystery also creates an opportunity for the film to explore the characters on a deeper level. Fear doesn't affect everyone in the same way. One person may panic and want to escape immediately, while another may become obsessed with discovering the truth. Someone else might remain calm because they already know more than they are saying. These differences can create conflict within the group, especially when trust begins to disappear. And once trust is gone, even simple conversations can become dangerous. Imagine being trapped in a house with people you thought you knew, only to realize that one of them may be hiding something. You cannot simply believe every explanation. You cannot always tell whether someone is helping you or manipulating you. That uncertainty can make the smallest interaction feel important. The house itself can also become increasingly threatening as the movie progresses. At the beginning, the audience is introduced to its rooms, corridors, doors, windows, and surroundings. Later, those same locations can take on completely different meanings. A room that seemed ordinary can become the place where a major discovery happens. A hallway that appeared empty can suddenly feel like the most dangerous part of the property. This is one of the strengths of contained thrillers. Instead of constantly changing locations, the filmmakers can make one environment evolve with the story. The audience becomes familiar with the setting, and that familiarity can actually make the suspense stronger. You know where the characters are, so when something changes, you notice it immediately. The pacing becomes especially important at this stage. The movie needs to balance quiet moments with moments of danger. If everything is intense all the time, the audience eventually becomes used to it. But when the film slows down before something important happens, even a small sound or movement can feel terrifying. That is why silence can sometimes be more effective than a loud scare. The trailer can also be viewed differently once we understand this kind of storytelling. A trailer may show quick shots of the house, characters looking frightened, strange discoveries, and moments that appear to reveal something important. But those scenes can be deliberately presented without context. A character running through a hallway might not be running from what we think. A conversation that sounds threatening might have a completely different meaning when we finally see the full scene. That is one reason movie trailers should not always be treated as complete summaries. They are designed to create curiosity. For The Last House, the release date is another part of the movie's overall journey. As a 2026 project, the film enters a year filled with major Hollywood releases, which means standing out is not easy. A thriller needs a strong hook, memorable marketing, and a story that gives audiences something they haven't seen countless times before. The title and premise give the movie a natural hook, but execution will ultimately determine whether it works. A strong cast can help with that. When actors make their characters feel like real people instead of characters simply waiting for the next plot point, the audience becomes emotionally invested. If something happens to them, we care. If they make a dangerous decision, we understand why. And when the truth is finally revealed, the impact becomes stronger because we've spent enough time with them. That emotional connection is especially important in a mystery because the audience is constantly trying to understand the characters. Who can be trusted? Who is hiding something? Who knows the truth? And who might not survive long enough to reveal it? Those questions can carry the story from one major sequence to the next. Another interesting possibility is that the house may have a history that predates the main characters. If the property has been connected to previous events, then the current situation could be part of a much older mystery. That would give the movie another layer because the characters would not simply be trying to survive what is happening now. They would also be trying to understand what happened before they arrived. This kind of backstory can make a location feel almost like a character itself. The more the audience learns about the house, the more its presence becomes important. It stops feeling like four walls and a roof and starts feeling like the center of everything. Every room can contain a clue. Every locked door can raise another question. Every unexplained sound can suggest that the characters are not alone. But the most effective mystery stories eventually have to deliver answers. A movie cannot keep asking questions forever. At some point, the characters need to uncover information that changes the direction of the story. The audience needs to understand why certain events happened and how the different pieces connect. The best reveals are not necessarily the ones nobody could predict. Sometimes the most satisfying twist is the one that makes you look back at earlier scenes and realize that the clues were there all along. That is the kind of payoff The Last House needs to aim for. If the movie succeeds, earlier moments can take on a completely different meaning after the truth is revealed. A character's strange behavior suddenly makes sense. A conversation that seemed insignificant becomes important. An object that appeared to be part of the background turns out to have a purpose. And that is when a thriller can really reward the audience. The final stretch of the story should bring together the mystery, the characters, and the danger surrounding the house. By this point, the audience should understand what the characters are fighting against, but there should still be enough uncertainty to keep the ending unpredictable. The biggest question becomes whether the characters can escape the situation they have found themselves in. Because getting into the house may have been easy, getting out could be something completely different. And that is ultimately what makes the concept of The Last House so interesting. Behind a simple title is the possibility of a story about secrets, fear, trust, survival, and the consequences of discovering something that was never meant to be found. Whether the movie becomes a major thriller or simply another entry in the crowded world of Hollywood suspense films will depend on the execution. But the concept gives it a foundation that can work extremely well if the characters feel real, the mystery develops naturally, and the final answers actually matter. For now, the biggest reason to keep an eye on The Last House is simple. The less we know, the more questions the movie creates. And sometimes, for a thriller, that is exactly where the fun begins. What makes a mystery like this even more interesting is the possibility that the characters may not understand the situation at the same time as the audience. Sometimes the person watching the story can notice something that the characters completely miss. A small detail in the background, a strange reaction, or a sentence that doesn't quite make sense can become important later. This creates a different kind of suspense because you're not just waiting for the characters to find the truth. You're trying to stay one step ahead of them. As the events inside the house become more complicated, the characters have to start making decisions without having all the information they need. That's a dangerous position to be in. When people are frightened, they don't always make logical choices. They may trust the wrong person, investigate something they should leave alone, or ignore an obvious warning because they believe there has to be a reasonable explanation. And that is exactly where the tension can grow. The most effective scenes in a movie like The Last House don't necessarily need something terrifying to happen every few minutes. Sometimes all the movie needs is a character realizing that something doesn't feel right. They look around the room. They notice that something has changed. They remember a conversation from earlier. Suddenly, the audience starts putting the pieces together along with them. The house can become especially important during these moments because the characters are surrounded by things they don't understand. They may know the basic layout, but that doesn't mean they know the history behind it. A locked room could contain nothing important, or it could completely change their understanding of what brought them there. A photograph, document, personal belonging, or hidden space could reveal a connection between people who appeared unrelated. That kind of discovery can turn the story in an entirely different direction. Instead of simply asking what is happening now, the characters begin asking what happened before they arrived. And those two questions are very different. The past can be one of the most powerful tools in a thriller because it allows the filmmakers to reveal information gradually. Instead of explaining everything through one long conversation, the story can allow the audience to discover the history piece by piece. Each discovery adds another layer, and by the time the full picture starts becoming visible, the audience realizes that the situation is much bigger than it first appeared. This is also where the relationships between the characters can become more complicated. People who were working together may start disagreeing. Someone may insist that they should leave immediately, while another person believes that leaving without finding answers would be a mistake. Another character might have a completely different reason for staying. Those disagreements aren't just there to create arguments. They can reveal personality. Fear exposes people. Some become protective. Some become selfish. Some become aggressive. And some become strangely calm. That last type of character can be especially interesting because calmness in a dangerous situation can mean several different things. Maybe they're simply brave. Maybe they've experienced something similar before. Or maybe they know exactly what is happening and have been keeping that information to themselves. Once that possibility enters the audience's mind, every scene involving that character becomes more interesting. You start paying attention to their words. You notice where they look. You question why they don't seem surprised by certain discoveries. And the movie can use that suspicion to keep the audience guessing. A strong thriller should also make the audience question its own assumptions. If you decide too early that you know who the villain is, the story has an opportunity to challenge that conclusion. If you believe the house is haunted, perhaps there is a completely different explanation. If you think someone is being hunted, maybe that person is actually the one controlling the situation. The best mysteries keep several possibilities alive at the same time. That is why the story doesn't need to reveal everything immediately. In fact, revealing too much too early could make the movie weaker. The audience needs enough information to stay interested, but not enough information to solve everything before the characters do. It's a difficult balance, but when it works, the viewer becomes completely involved. Another important element is atmosphere. A house can have a personality of its own depending on how it is presented. During daylight, it might look old but harmless. At night, the same rooms can suddenly feel unfamiliar. The lighting changes, the sounds become more noticeable, and empty spaces begin to feel occupied even when nobody is visible. This is where sound design can play a major role. A distant noise can create more tension than a visible threat. A floorboard moving somewhere upstairs can make the audience wonder who is there. A door slowly opening can become an entire suspense sequence. And sometimes the most effective moment comes when the expected sound never happens. The audience waits. Nothing. Then something completely different happens. That kind of uncertainty can keep people watching because they don't know where the next thread is going to come from. As the characters investigate deeper, the movie can also begin connecting individual events that previously appeared unrelated. Something that happened near the beginning may suddenly become important. A person mentioned in passing may have a much larger role. A location that seemed insignificant may turn out to be connected to the central mystery. This is the point where a well-structured thriller starts rewarding viewers for paying attention. Instead of feeling like random events are happening, everything begins to connect. And once the connections become clear, the story can become much more personal. Perhaps the characters didn't end up at the house by accident. Perhaps someone wanted them there. Maybe one of them has been connected to the house for much longer than the others realize. That possibility changes the entire dynamic because now the question isn't simply who is responsible. It's why. Why these people? Why this house? Why now? Those questions can become more important than the immediate danger. At the same time, the characters still have to survive whatever is happening around them. Understanding the mystery doesn't automatically make them safe. In fact, learning the truth may make things even more dangerous because once you know something you're not supposed to know, someone may try to stop you from telling anyone else. That creates a natural escalation. First, the characters are confused. Then they become suspicious. After that, they discover something disturbing. And eventually, they realize they are in serious danger. The transition between these stages is what can give the movie its momentum. Instead of throwing the audience directly into chaos, the story can slowly tighten the pressure until the characters have fewer and fewer options. The safe choices disappear one by one. Leaving becomes difficult. Trust becomes impossible. And the house begins to feel less like a place they entered and more like a place that refuses to let them go. This is also where the title can take on another possible meaning. Maybe the phrase, "the last house," isn't simply describing the location. Maybe it represents the final stage of something, the last place connected to an old secret, the last remaining witness, the last chance to uncover the truth. Or perhaps it has a meaning that only becomes clear near the end. A title that gains a different meaning after watching the movie can be extremely satisfying because it makes the audience rethink what they assumed at the beginning. And that's what a good mystery should do. It should make you look back. It should make you remember the first few scenes and realize that the movie was giving you information without telling you exactly what that information meant. The characters may also reach a point where they have to choose between the truth and their own safety. Sometimes knowing the truth isn't enough. You have to decide what you're willing to sacrifice to expose it. That decision can become the emotional heart of the story. If one character chooses to stay behind so someone else can escape, that tells us something about them. If another character chooses to protect a secret even when lives are at risk, that tells us something completely different. These choices make the characters more than pieces of the mystery. They give the story emotional weight. And as the movie approaches its more intense sections, those personal choices can become just as important as the mystery itself. Because eventually, every secret has to come out. The question is whether the characters will still be standing when it does. Why this point? The situation has become much more difficult for the characters to control. What started as a strange discovery has turned into something that affects every decision they make. They can no longer move through the house without wondering what might be waiting for them. Even when nothing appears to be happening, the possibility of danger remains in the background. That constant uncertainty can be more frightening than knowing exactly what you're dealing with. When you know where the threat is, you can prepare for it. But when you don't know whether the danger is coming from outside, from another person, or from something connected to the house itself, every option becomes a risk. The characters are forced to make choices with incomplete information, and that can create some of the strongest moments in the story. One of the biggest changes at this stage is the way the characters begin looking at one another. Earlier, they may have believed that they were all facing the same problem. Now, that assumption starts to disappear. Small disagreements become more serious because everyone knows that trust can be dangerous. If someone suddenly disappears from the room, people start asking where they went. If someone knows something they shouldn't know, everyone notices. And if someone changes their story, even slightly, suspicion can spread through the entire group. This is where the movie can turn the house into a psychological battlefield. The characters aren't only fighting against an external threat anymore. They're fighting against doubt. And doubt can destroy a group very quickly. Imagine being trapped somewhere with people you don't completely trust. You hear a noise somewhere in the building, but nobody admits to making it. One person says they saw someone moving upstairs. Another insists that nobody could have been there. A third person starts accusing everyone else of hiding something. At that point, the audience is placed in the same uncomfortable position as the characters. Who is telling the truth? The movie can use these moments to create tension without constantly showing the source of the danger. Sometimes the fear comes from uncertainty itself. The audience knows something is wrong, but doesn't know exactly what form that danger will take. And when the story finally gives a partial answer, it should create an even bigger question. That's how a mystery keeps moving. One answer opens another door. One discovery creates another problem. And every attempt to escape brings the characters closer to something they weren't prepared to discover. The history connected to the house can become particularly important here. If the property has been hiding secrets for years, the characters may begin uncovering evidence that changes their understanding of the people connected to it. Perhaps old events were covered up. Perhaps someone disappeared without explanation. Perhaps an incident that was considered an accident was actually something much darker. The important thing is that the past doesn't remain separate from the present. It starts affecting everything happening now. This can also explain why certain characters behave differently from the beginning. Someone may have a personal connection to the location. Another character may have been searching for answers for years. Someone else may simply have been brought into the situation without understanding why. Once those connections begin to emerge, the story becomes less about escaping a dangerous place and more about uncovering a hidden history. And that can raise the emotional stakes. If the mystery involves someone's family, their past, or something they have spent years trying to forget, discovering the truth can be painful. The characters aren't simply learning information. They're being forced to confront parts of their lives they may have avoided for a long time. That makes the story more personal. A good thriller doesn't need every character to be completely innocent. In fact, complicated characters are often more interesting because their decisions aren't always easy to predict. Someone can make a terrible choice for a reason that the audience understands. Another character can do something heroic while still carrying their own secrets. There doesn't always have to be a simple division between good and evil. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who believes they are doing the right thing. That possibility can make the central mystery even harder to solve. As the pressure increases, the characters also have to deal with practical problems. Communication may become difficult. Their phones might not work properly. Roads may be blocked. A vehicle may no longer be available. Weather or the surrounding environment could make leaving more complicated. These obstacles are important because the audience needs to believe that the characters can't simply walk away whenever they want. The more trapped they become, the more desperate their decisions can be. And desperation changes people. A character who was calm earlier may suddenly become aggressive. Someone who wanted to investigate everything may now want to run. Another person might decide that the only way to survive is to confront the threat directly. These different reactions can create conflict at exactly the moment when cooperation is most important. The house can also begin revealing more of its secrets as the characters explore areas they haven't previously entered. Hidden rooms, old photographs, forgotten belongings, or documents can provide clues about what happened there. But not every clue needs to provide a complete answer. Sometimes a clue should create confusion. A photograph may show someone who shouldn't be there. A name may appear in an unexpected place. A date may connect two events that were supposedly unrelated. A room may look as though someone has been using it recently, even though everyone believed the property had been empty. These details make the audience start building theories. And that's one of the most enjoyable parts of watching a mystery. You begin connecting things yourself. You start thinking you know where the story is going. Then the movie gives you one more piece of information. Suddenly, your entire theory changes. That kind of storytelling can keep viewers engaged for a long time because the audience isn't passively watching. They're participating. The strongest reveal, however, shouldn't come out of nowhere. It should feel surprising but believable. When the truth is finally shown, the audience should be able to look back and recognize the clues. That's the difference between a twist that feels earned and one that feels random. If The Last House wants its mystery to leave an impact, the clues need to matter. The characters' discoveries should eventually connect. The suspicious behavior should have an explanation. The strange events should have a purpose. And the central question surrounding the house should lead somewhere meaningful. As the characters get closer to that answer, the danger can become more direct. Someone may realize that they are being watched. A threat that was previously hidden may finally make itself known. The characters may discover that they were never as alone as they thought. That realization can completely change the atmosphere. Because there is a big difference between believing something might be inside the house and knowing that someone is actually there. Once that happens, hiding is no longer enough. The characters have to act. They have to decide who they can trust. They have to decide where to go. And most importantly, they have to decide whether discovering the truth is worth the risk. At this stage, the story can begin moving toward its central confrontation. But before that confrontation happens, there is still one important question hanging over everything. What exactly does the person behind all of this want? Is it revenge? Is it control? Is it protection? Is it connected to something that happened years ago? Or is the entire situation designed to force the characters to reveal something they have been hiding? The answer to that question can determine the direction of the final act. Because once the motivation becomes clear, the events inside the house may suddenly make sense. The strange behavior, the hidden clues, the fear, the reason certain people were brought together. Everything may eventually point toward one central truth. And when that truth finally begins to surface, the characters will have to face something they have been avoiding since the moment they entered the house. The real danger may never have been the place itself. It may have been the secret waiting to be discovered inside it. The closer the characters get to understanding what is really happening, the harder it becomes to pretend that everything can still return to normal. There is a point in every mystery when suspicion turns into certainty, and for these characters, that moment can change everything. They may not know the entire truth yet, but they now have enough information to understand that what brought them to this house was not simply bad luck. Someone knows more than they have admitted. That realization can be more dangerous than any physical threat because it changes the way every character sees the people around them. A person who seemed helpful may suddenly become suspicious. Someone who was quiet in earlier scenes may start attracting attention. And the character everyone trusted may be the one carrying the biggest secret. This is where the story can become much more personal. Until now, the characters have been trying to understand the mystery. Now they have to understand each other. One of the most interesting things a thriller can do is slowly reveal that its characters have their own reasons for being where they are. People rarely walk into dangerous situations without some kind of motivation. Maybe they were looking for someone. Maybe they were following a clue. Maybe they wanted something that belonged to the past. Or perhaps they were simply trying to help another person without realizing how complicated the situation would become. But once everyone starts revealing their reasons, the group can become divided. One person wants the truth. Another wants to leave. Someone else wants to protect a secret. And someone may want to make sure that nobody discovers anything at all. Those conflicting goals create natural tension because there is no longer one clear path forward. Even if the characters agree that they are in danger, they may disagree completely about what they should do next. That can lead to some of the most emotional conversations in the movie. Not every confrontation needs to involve shouting or violence. Sometimes a quiet conversation can be more powerful. A character can ask a simple question and receive an answer that doesn't feel right. Another character can remain silent for a few seconds too long. That hesitation can tell the audience more than a long explanation. And when the truth finally starts coming out, it doesn't have to arrive all at once. A character might admit one small thing. Then another person reveals something else. Suddenly, the audience realizes that several people have been keeping secrets for completely different reasons. This can make the mystery feel much larger than expected. The house may have been connected to several events over the years, and the current situation could be the result of all those events finally coming together. Something that happened long ago may have created consequences that nobody expected to continue into the present. That is one of the strongest themes a thriller can explore. The past doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes people spend years trying to forget something, only for one event to bring it back. And when that happens, the characters have to deal with consequences that may have started long before they arrived at the house. The atmosphere can also become more intense as the story moves forward. The house that once seemed simply mysterious now feels hostile. Familiar rooms become dangerous because the characters know that someone could be watching them. Every movement becomes deliberate. The audience also becomes more aware of the environment. A staircase isn't just a staircase anymore. A closed door isn't just a closed door. A window isn't simply a way outside. Everything becomes part of the tension. This is where visual storytelling can do a lot of work. Instead of explaining every threat through dialogue, the movie can allow the environment to tell the story. A broken object, a damaged photograph, or something unexpectedly moved from its original position can suggest that someone has been there. And if the characters realize it too late, the tension becomes even stronger. They thought they were alone. They weren't. That realization can lead to the first major turning point of the story. The characters may finally encounter the person or force responsible for the events around them. But even then, the movie doesn't necessarily need to reveal everything immediately. The first confrontation could raise more questions instead of answering them. Perhaps the person knows details that nobody else should know. Perhaps they mention something from the character's past. Perhaps they reveal that the characters have misunderstood the entire situation. This is where the audience may have to reconsider everything they believed earlier. Maybe the house wasn't chosen randomly. Maybe the people inside weren't chosen randomly either. Maybe there is a connection between them that they didn't know about. And if that's true, then the entire story changes. The characters aren't simply victims of circumstance. They are part of a much larger plan. Once that possibility becomes clear, the stakes become much higher. If someone deliberately brought them together, then there must be a reason. And if there is a reason, then the final objective is probably still ahead. That means the danger hasn't reached its peak yet. The characters now have to figure out what the real objective is before it is too late. At this point, fear can start turning into determination. A character who spent most of the movie trying to escape may realize that running will never solve the problem. Another character may finally admit what they know. Someone who was previously unwilling to take risks may decide that finding the truth is the only way to survive. That shift can make the characters feel stronger without suddenly turning them into completely different people. They are still afraid. They are simply no longer willing to let fear control them. And that is an important difference. The audience has now spent enough time with these characters to understand their weaknesses and motivations. So when they finally decide to fight back, the moment can feel earned. But fighting back isn't necessarily simple. The characters still don't have all the answers. They still don't know who they can trust. And they may not realize that someone is already one step ahead of them. This can lead to another major discovery inside the house. Something hidden away for years is finally found. Maybe it is connected to the person responsible. Maybe it explains the history of the property. Maybe it reveals what happened to someone who disappeared. Whatever it is, the discovery should change the character's understanding of the situation. The most powerful discoveries aren't simply shocking. They are useful. They give the characters information they can act on. And once they have that information, they finally have a direction. For the first time, they know where they need to go and what they need to find. But knowing the truth and reaching it are two different things. The person behind everything may realize that the characters are getting close. That means the remaining time becomes limited. The characters have to move before their opportunity disappears. This is where the movie can begin accelerating toward its final stages. The quiet investigation starts turning into direct confrontation. The characters stop asking whether something is wrong. They already know. Now they need to survive long enough to prove it. And perhaps the most important question is still waiting for them. If the truth is finally revealed, will it actually set them free? Or will discovering the truth make them even more trapped than before? Because sometimes the most dangerous secret isn't the one you don't know. It's the one you finally discover. The discovery changes the atmosphere almost immediately. Until this point, the characters have been trying to understand what is happening, but now they finally have something concrete to work with. They have a clue that connects different pieces of the mystery, and for the first time, their fear is mixed with a sense of purpose. But there is a problem. The more they learn, the more dangerous the situation becomes. A secret can remain harmless when nobody knows about it. The moment someone starts uncovering it, the people protecting that secret have a reason to act. That is exactly what can make the next stage of the story so tense. The characters may believe they are finally getting ahead, while someone else may already know exactly what they have discovered. This creates a dangerous race. The characters need answers. Someone else needs to stop them from finding those answers. and both sides are running out of time. One of the characters may begin putting together a timeline of what happened before they arrived. At first, the information seems disconnected. Dates don't appear to match. Certain events seem to have happened years apart, but then one detail links them together. The same name appears more than once. The same location is mentioned. The same event keeps appearing in different pieces of evidence. Suddenly, what looked like several unrelated incidents begins to look like one long story. And that can be the moment when the movie's mystery becomes much more personal. The house isn't simply connected to something that happened once. It may have been connected to a pattern that has continued for years. That possibility changes the meaning of everything the characters have already experienced. They begin wondering whether the current events were inevitable. Was this always going to happen? Did someone spend years waiting for the right moment? Or did one unexpected decision finally bring everything back? The answers may be hidden in the history of the people involved. This is where character backstories become important. A person who seemed to have no connection to the house may suddenly reveal that they have heard about it before. Another character may recognize a name from an old photograph. Someone may remember a story they were told as a child but never believed was true. Those small memories can suddenly become valuable clues. And when different characters begin comparing what they know, they may realize that each person has only one piece of the puzzle. No single character has the full picture. Together, they might. But getting everyone to cooperate isn't easy. Trust has already been damaged, and some people may still be holding back information. Even when they know that honesty is their best chance of surviving, fear can make them hesitate. What if revealing the truth puts someone else in danger? What if the secret involves a family member? What if the person responsible is someone they never expected? These questions can create emotional conflict that is just as important as the physical danger. The movie can also use this stage to show how much the characters have changed. At the beginning, they may have entered the house with completely different goals. Some were confident. Some were skeptical. Some didn't believe anything unusual was happening. Now, they have all been affected by what they've experienced. The character who once dismissed the danger may become the most cautious person in the group. The person who wanted to leave may become determined to uncover the truth. And the person who seemed strongest may finally show how frightened they actually are. These changes make the characters feel human. Nobody remains exactly the same after going through something like this. As the investigation continues, the characters may discover another part of the property that they hadn't previously noticed. It could be hidden behind a wall, beneath the floor, or somewhere that appears completely ordinary until someone realizes that a detail doesn't belong. The discovery itself may not be dramatic, but what they find inside can be a collection of objects, old records, personal belongings, photographs, evidence that someone has been watching events from a distance, and perhaps something that proves the danger isn't limited to the past. Someone has been preparing for the present. That revelation can be extremely unsettling because it means the characters haven't simply stumbled into an old mystery. They may have been brought into it deliberately. Once that becomes clear, the question changes again. Who arranged everything? And how long have they been planning it? The answer may lead to a character who has remained in the background for much of the story. Someone who didn't seem important earlier may suddenly become central. This kind of reveal works best when the movie has already given the audience small hints. Maybe the character appeared briefly in an earlier scene. Maybe they said something that seemed harmless. Maybe they knew a detail that nobody else should have known. When those moments are revisited, the audience can realize that the warning signs were there. The person wasn't invisible. We simply didn't understand what we were looking at. That can make the reveal much more satisfying. At the same time, the characters may realize that the house itself has another hidden feature. There could be a second entrance, an underground space, an old passage, or another part of the property that explains how someone has been moving around without being seen. That would solve one mystery while creating another. Because if someone has been moving through the house unnoticed, then the characters have never truly been alone. And that means the threat could be much closer than they realize. The tension can rise quickly from there. A character may hear something. Another person notices that an object has moved. Someone disappears for a few minutes. Then the group realizes that one of their assumptions was completely wrong. The person they thought was safe may be missing. Now the characters have a new problem. They can't simply continue investigating. They have to find them. This gives the story an emotional reason to move forward instead of making the investigation feel mechanical. The characters aren't searching for information anymore. They're searching for someone they care about, and that changes the risk. They have to enter areas they previously avoided. They have to confront things they were afraid to investigate. And they have to do it knowing that the person they are searching for may already be in serious danger. This can lead to one of the movie's most intense sequences. The characters move through the house carefully, listening for any sign of movement. Every room creates another possibility. They don't know whether they are getting closer to the missing person or walking directly into a trap. The silence becomes unbearable. Then they find something. But it's not the person they were looking for. It's evidence. Evidence that tells them exactly where they need to go next. At this point, there is no turning back. The characters finally understand that the mystery is reaching its final stage, but they still don't know what the final confrontation will look like. They have spent the entire story trying to uncover the truth. Now they are about to meet the person who has been hiding it. And that person may know something about them that they never expected. Because the biggest secret surrounding the house may not be what happened there. It may be why these particular people were chosen to return to it. That question becomes impossible to ignore as the story moves toward its final confrontation. And once the characters finally discover the answer, they may realize that the house was never the real destination. It was the trap. The realization that the house may have been a trap changes everything. Until now, the characters could still convince themselves that they had simply made a series of bad decisions. Maybe they came there for the wrong reason. Maybe they trusted the wrong person. Maybe they were simply unlucky. But if they were deliberately brought there, then none of this is an accident. Someone wanted them inside. And that means every event that followed may have been part of a much larger plan. The characters begin looking back at the moments that brought them together. A conversation that seemed casual suddenly feels suspicious. A meeting that appeared to happen by chance may have been arranged. Even the reason they were given for coming to the property may have been nothing more than a carefully constructed excuse. The more they think about it, the more disturbing some rooms may have no obvious exit. Cameras or other methods of observation may reveal that someone has been monitoring the characters. The realization that they have been watched can be deeply unsettling. It means their private conversations weren't private, their plans weren't secret, and their attempts to escape may have been observed from the beginning. At that point, the characters understand that their enemy may know them better than they know the enemy. That gives the antagonist a major advantage. But the characters have something too. They have each other. Or at least, they have the possibility of working together. The problem is whether they can finally put their differences aside. One character may reveal a secret they have been hiding throughout the story. It might be something connected to the house, a past relationship, or an event that happened years earlier. The confession changes the way the others look at them. For a moment, it seems like this person might be responsible. But then another piece of evidence appears. And suddenly, that explanation doesn't work anymore. This is where the story can use misdirection effectively. Just when the audience thinks the mystery has been solved, another possibility appears. Maybe there isn't only one person involved. Maybe someone is helping the real person behind the events. That possibility makes the situation even more complicated because the characters can no longer assume that identifying one person will solve everything. There could be multiple motives, multiple secrets, and multiple people who want the truth to remain hidden. This is also where the emotional history between the characters can become important. If two people have known each other for years, a hidden betrayal can hurt much more than a simple disagreement. If someone trusted another person completely, and then discovers that they were lied to, the emotional consequences can be powerful. Trust is one of the most important themes in a story like this. Because when you're trapped in a dangerous place, trust can save your life. But trusting the wrong person can destroy it. The characters may eventually realize that one of them has been communicating with someone outside the house. That discovery immediately creates suspicion. Was the person trying to get help, or were they giving information to the person responsible? Nobody knows. And because nobody knows, everyone becomes a possible threat. The tension can rise even further when communication with the outside world suddenly disappears. Now there is no easy way to call for help. No guarantee that anyone knows where they are. No certainty that anyone is coming. The characters are completely on their own. That forces them to depend on one another. And ironically, that may be exactly what the person behind everything wants. Maybe the entire situation was designed to force these people into the same place so that old secrets would finally come out. Maybe someone has spent years waiting for this moment. If so, the house isn't simply a prison. It is a stage. Every character has been placed in a specific position, and the person controlling the situation is waiting for them to reveal themselves. That idea can make the entire movie feel much more psychological. The danger isn't always physical. Sometimes the characters are being pushed emotionally. One person is confronted with guilt. Another is forced to face the past. Someone else has to admit a betrayal. And another character has to decide whether they are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect someone else. These moments can give the movie more depth because the characters are no longer simply reacting to external threats. They are confronting themselves. And eventually, someone may break. A character who has been hiding information finally tells the others everything they know. The confession may reveal why the house matters. It may explain who has been watching them. And it may reveal what happened to the people who were connected to the property before them. For the first time, the audience gets a clearer picture. But even this explanation may not be complete, because the person telling the truth may still be leaving something out. That final missing piece can become the key to the entire mystery. The characters now know enough to understand what they need to do. They have to reach a specific part of the house. They have to find something that was hidden. And they have to do it before the person controlling the situation realizes that they have figured everything out. The urgency becomes impossible to ignore. They move quickly through the house. They check rooms they previously avoided. They follow the clues they have collected. And eventually, they reach a place that seems completely different from everything they've seen before. This could be the real center of the mystery. A place that has been hidden from everyone. A place where the past has been preserved. And a place where the final answers may be waiting. But before they can understand what they have found, something happens that changes the situation again. The lights go out. The doors close. And the characters realize they are no longer searching for the person behind everything. That person has been searching for them. And now, they are finally face to face. For a moment, nobody knows what to do. The sudden change in the situation leaves the characters frozen because they have spent so long believing that they were the ones searching for answers. Now they realize that someone else has been controlling the situation from the beginning. The person standing in front of them may not even need to say much. Their presence alone answers one question. They were never alone. What happens next depends heavily on the relationship between this person and the characters. If the person is connected to the house's history, then the confrontation becomes more than a simple fight between strangers. There is a reason these people were brought together, and there is a reason the truth was hidden for so long. The characters demand answers. Why were they brought here? What happened in this house? And why did nobody tell them the truth? But the answers don't come immediately. Instead, the person behind the mystery begins revealing information slowly, almost as if they want the characters to understand the situation before they decide what to do next. This can be one of the most important moments in the entire story because the audience finally gets to hear the other side. Until now, we've been seeing the events from the character's perspective. Now we begin to understand what the person responsible believes. And that can completely change the way we look at the story. Maybe this person doesn't see themselves as a villain. Maybe they believe they are correcting something that happened years ago. Maybe they believe someone deserves punishment. Maybe they have been trying to expose a truth that was buried by powerful people. Or perhaps their motivation is far more personal. Whatever the reason, the most interesting villains are often the ones who believe their actions are justified. They don't wake up thinking they're evil. They think they're right. And when a character believes they are right, they can become much more dangerous because they aren't afraid of crossing boundaries. The confrontation can also reveal that the house has been part of a family conflict for years. Something happened between people who lived there, and the consequences continued long after everyone thought the matter was finished. The characters may learn that the story they were told about the house was false. Perhaps someone was blamed for an event they didn't cause. Perhaps a death was covered up. Perhaps someone disappeared and was never actually gone. And perhaps the truth was deliberately changed because the real person responsible had something to lose. These revelations can give the movie a much stronger emotional foundation. The house is no longer mysterious simply because strange things happen there. It's mysterious because people have spent years hiding what happened inside it. The person confronting the characters may explain that they have been waiting for the right opportunity to bring everyone back together. They may have believed that only by forcing these people into the same place could the truth finally be exposed. But there is a problem with that plan. People don't always react the way you expect. Fear makes them unpredictable. Anger makes them reckless. And guilt can make people do things they never imagined they were capable of. The characters begin turning against one another again, but this time the person behind the plan encourages it. They want the characters to accuse each other. They want old wounds to reopen. Because every accusation brings another secret into the open. One person admits they knew about the house. Another reveals that they had seen the person responsible before. Someone else confesses that they came there looking for something. Suddenly, the group realizes that almost everyone has been hiding something. And that makes the central mystery even more complicated. The person behind the entire situation may have expected this. They may have known that once the characters were trapped together, the secrets would eventually come out. But there is one thing they didn't expect. Someone in the group refuses to play along. Instead of turning against the others, the character realizes that the only way to survive is to stop giving the person in control what they want. They tell everyone to stop arguing, stop blaming each other, and start working together. That moment can become a major turning point. For the first time, the characters understand that their biggest weakness has been division. Every time they argued, they became easier to control. Every time they suspected one another, they lost time. And every time they focused on their individual secrets, they ignored the larger threat. Now they finally understand the game. And once you understand the game, you can start changing the rules. The characters begin quietly planning their next move. They don't know whether the plan will work. They don't even know whether everyone can be trusted. But they know they have to try. One character distracts the person controlling the situation while another searches for a way out. Someone else tries to restore communication with the outside world. Another person looks for the hidden evidence that could expose everything. For the first time, the group is moving with a common purpose. But the person behind everything isn't helpless. They know the house better than anyone. They know the hidden passages. They know which doors lock. They know where the cameras are. And they know exactly what the characters are likely to do next. That creates a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The characters move through one part of the property while their enemy anticipates them from another. They think they have found an escape route, but it leads directly into another trap. They find a phone, but it has no signal. They find a vehicle, but the keys are missing. They discover an exit, but the door is locked from the other side. Every possible escape seems to disappear. And that's when one of the characters notices something. A detail that everyone else ignored. A small mark on the wall. A symbol. A number. Something that appears meaningless at first, but connects to the evidence they discovered earlier. They follow it. The clue leads them toward another part of the property. And this time, the path doesn't seem designed to keep them inside. It seems to lead somewhere else. Maybe there is a hidden way out. Maybe the person behind everything made one mistake. Or maybe the path is another trap. The characters have no choice. They follow it. The passage becomes darker and narrower as they move deeper into the property. The sounds from the main house slowly disappear, leaving only their footsteps and breathing. Then they reach a door. Unlike the others, this one isn't locked. That's what makes it suspicious. If someone wanted to keep them out, why leave the door open? One character reaches for the handle. Another tells them to stop. They listen. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then they hear something from the other side. A voice. Not the voice of the person they expected. A voice they recognize. And suddenly, everything they thought they knew about the house begins falling apart again. Because the person behind the door isn't a stranger. It's someone they believed was already gone. Nobody moves for a few seconds. The voice comes again, quieter this time, almost as if the person on the other side knows exactly what effect their presence is having. One of the characters immediately recognizes it. There is no mistake. This is someone they believed had disappeared long before any of them arrived at the house. The realization creates more questions than answers. If this person is alive, then everything the characters believed about the past may be wrong. The disappearance, the history of the house, and the reason everyone was brought there could all be connected. The door slowly opens. Nobody knows what they are going to see. Then the person appears. They look exhausted, frightened. The reason was simple. There was something inside the property that could prove everything. Something that had never been destroyed. Something that could reveal what really happened years ago. The characters immediately want to know what it is. But the person refuses to answer. Not yet. They explain that the evidence is dangerous, and if it falls into the wrong hands, the entire situation could become even worse. The house has been watched for years, and there may still be people outside who are waiting for someone to find what is hidden inside. That means the characters aren't safe even now. The person who was supposed to be dead then reveals something even more disturbing. Someone else knows they are alive, and that person is already inside the house. The characters look at each other. Suddenly, the idea of an unseen enemy becomes real again. They ask who it is. The answer comes slowly. It's someone they have trusted, someone who has been with them since the beginning. That revelation sends shock through the group. Everyone starts thinking back to every conversation and every unexplained moment. The person they trusted may have been manipulating them from the start. But before anyone can decide what to do, they hear a noise somewhere behind them. Someone is moving through the passage. The group turns. Nothing. Then the lights suddenly return. For a brief moment, everything looks normal. And that's when they realize the person who was standing behind them a few seconds ago is gone. They search the passage. There is nowhere obvious for them to go. No open door. No visible exit. They haven't disappeared through the entrance. They've simply vanished. That tells the characters something important. The house has more hidden spaces than they realized. The person who disappeared must know how to move through them. And if that's true, then the entire property may be connected by passages that have remained hidden for years. The group returns to the room and begins searching the walls. They knock against different sections, listening for changes in sound. Eventually, one part of the wall gives a hollow response. They remove part of the covering and discover a narrow opening. Behind it is a hidden passage. The passage leads deeper into the house. But this time, there are signs that someone has been using it recently. Fresh footprints. A discarded piece of clothing. A light still burning farther ahead. Someone is there. The group moves carefully through the passage. The deeper they go, the colder the air becomes. Then they hear voices. Two people are talking. One of them is the person they were searching for. The other is someone from the group. The conversation reveals that the betrayal was real. One of the characters has been working with the person behind the entire plan. But their motivation isn't what everyone expected. They weren't doing it for money. They weren't doing it because they wanted anyone to die. They were trying to protect someone. A family member. Someone whose connection to the house could destroy their entire life if the truth came out. That changes the situation again. The characters now understand that almost everyone involved has something to lose. Nobody is completely innocent. But nobody may be completely guilty either. The person behind the plan believes exposing the truth is worth any cost. The person helping them believes protecting their family is more important. And the others simply want to survive. 3 different goals. 1 house. 1 secret. And no easy way out. The confrontation finally happens. The characters step into the hidden room and come face to face with the people who have been controlling the situation. This time, there is nowhere left to hide. The evidence is sitting in the room. Old records, photographs, documents, and something that connects every major event together. The person who disappeared years ago explains what really happened. The story everyone knew was a lie. The person blamed for the original tragedy wasn't responsible. The evidence was deliberately changed. Witnesses were threatened. And the real story was buried because revealing it would have exposed people who had too much power to lose. The characters finally understand why the house remained important. It wasn't haunted. It wasn't cursed. It was a vault. A place where someone had hidden the truth because they believed one day someone would return for it. And now that day has finally arrived. But before anyone can take the evidence, a loud sound comes from somewhere above them. Then another. Someone has entered the house. Not one person. Several. The person behind the plan looks toward the ceiling and realizes that something has gone wrong. They weren't supposed to arrive yet. The characters suddenly understand that the people who have been watching the house have finally come inside. The evidence is no longer the only thing at risk. Everyone in the room is now in danger. There is no time left to argue. They take whatever evidence they can carry and prepare to escape through the hidden passage. But the passage they entered through is no longer safe. Footsteps are approaching from that direction. The group has only one option. They have to find another way out. And somewhere inside the house, another hidden route is waiting. The person who disappeared earlier suddenly points toward a wall and says there is one final passage. But it comes with a warning. It leads directly beneath the oldest part of the property. And according to the history of the house, nobody who entered that section ever came back. For the first time, even the person who knows the house best looks afraid. But the footsteps are getting closer. There is no other choice. The darkness beneath the house feels completely different from everything the characters have experienced so far. The rooms above were frightening because they were unfamiliar, but this place feels older, almost untouched. The walls are rough, the air is heavy, and there is barely enough light to see where they are going. Nobody talks for several seconds. They can still hear movement somewhere above them. The people who entered the house are searching for them. That means they have only a limited amount of time before someone discovers the hidden entrance. The person who knows the property tells everyone to keep moving. They explain that the underground section was built long before the current house existed. It was originally used for storage, but over the years it became something much more important. A place where people could hide things. And people, that last detail, makes everyone stop. There may have been others who came here before them. People who knew too much. People who disappeared. The group continues deeper into the passage, but now every step feels more dangerous. They don't know whether the tunnel has another exit or whether they are simply walking farther into a dead end. Then they find the first sign that someone was here recently. A small lantern. Still warm. Someone has been using this place. That means the underground area isn't abandoned. Someone knows about it. And if someone knows about it, they may already be waiting for them. The characters move more carefully after that discovery. They begin checking every corner before moving forward. Nobody wants to be the person who walks into a trap. Eventually, the tunnel opens into a much larger underground room. There are shelves along the walls, old boxes, metal containers, and dozens of objects covered in dust. At first, none of it seems important. Then one of the characters notices a photograph. They pick it up. The photograph shows the house many years earlier. Several people are standing outside, but one face immediately catches their attention. It belongs to someone who is supposed to have died long before the photograph was taken. The characters stare at each other. Another piece of the story has just fallen into place. The person who disappeared wasn't the only one who survived. There may have been others. The person who knows the house explains that the original incident was never what people were told. Several people were involved, but only a small part of the story became public. The rest was buried. Some people changed their identities. Some disappeared, and some were forced to remain silent. The house became the one place where the evidence could survive. That explains why so many people are willing to risk everything to control it. Whoever controls the evidence controls the story. And whoever controls the story can decide who gets blamed. That realization makes the characters understand why they have been hunted. They aren't being targeted because of who they are today. They are being targeted because of what they now know. One of the characters opens an old metal box. Inside are documents sealed in plastic. There are names, dates, addresses, and records that connect people who were never supposed to be connected. The evidence is overwhelming, but there is one document that stands out. It contains a handwritten note. The note explains that if anyone ever discovers the evidence, they should not trust the people who claim to be there to help, because the people who created the cover-up have spent years preparing for this exact possibility. The characters realize that even if they escape the house, they may not be safe outside. They also reveal that they were promised something. If they helped recover the evidence, the original secret would remain hidden. Their family would be protected, and they would be allowed to disappear. The characters realize that the betrayal wasn't simply about greed. It was fear, but fear doesn't erase consequences. The people who entered the room demand the evidence. They know it is there. They know the characters have found it, and they are prepared to take it by force. One of the characters quietly moves toward the old communication panel. Nobody notices. They connect the remaining wires. A signal begins. Very weak, but enough. The evidence starts transmitting. The character watches the progress indicator. 10%, 20, 30. The others continue talking, trying to keep the intruders distracted. 40%. The tension becomes unbearable. If the transmission completes, the evidence will no longer be under their control. But if they are discovered before it finishes, everything could be lost. 50%. One of the intruders notices the light. They turn toward the panel. The character immediately steps in front of it. 90%. The characters stop. They don't know whether it worked. Then the old device makes one final sound. Complete. The evidence is gone from their hands. But it is no longer only theirs. Now someone outside has it. The truth has a chance to survive. The people chasing them realize what has happened. Their entire advantage has disappeared. But they still have one thing. They know where the characters are. And the only remaining exit from the underground section is directly ahead. The group starts running. They can hear their pursuers behind them. The tunnel becomes narrower. The air becomes colder. Then they see light. An exit. For the first time, freedom is visible. But as they reach the opening, they stop. Because standing outside isn't safety. It's another problem. Several vehicles are waiting in the distance. And the people standing beside them aren't police. They are the people who have been searching for the evidence. The characters have escaped the house, but they have walked straight into another trap. They know that their secret is no longer completely under their control. That explains why they aren't attacking immediately. They need to know exactly how much information has been released. The characters suddenly understand their leverage. As long as the evidence remains outside their control, the people surrounding them can't simply kill them or destroy the remaining evidence. They need answers. They need to know who received the files. And they need to know how much has already been shared. The person who organized everything finally steps forward. They say the characters have made a serious mistake. They believe the evidence will destroy innocent people along with the guilty. The characters don't accept that explanation. They argue that the people responsible had years to tell the truth. They chose not to. Now the truth is finally coming out. The confrontation becomes emotional. The person in control insists that the original cover-up was created to protect people from something even worse. That statement catches everyone's attention. Something worse? The characters demand an explanation. The person refuses to give one. Instead, they ask whether the characters really want to know what happened all those years ago. Because once they know, there is no going back. One character says they've already come too far. They want the truth. The person looks at them for a moment. Then they reveal that the original event wasn't simply an isolated tragedy. It was connected to a much larger operation. The people involved weren't just protecting one secret. They were protecting several. The house was only one part of it. That revelation expands the story far beyond the property. The characters realize that what they found may be only the beginning. The documents they discovered contain names and dates connected to other locations, other people, other incidents. The house was simply where the evidence survived. The evidence has reached the wrong, or perhaps the right, people. The truth is moving faster than anyone expected. The characters finally have an opportunity to leave. They get into one of the vehicles that was abandoned nearby. But before they drive away, the person who knows the house looks back at it. They say there is one thing they still haven't found. The original evidence. The material that proves who started everything. The files they transmitted contain a lot of information, but not the one piece that could definitively identify the person responsible. That evidence is still inside the house. And if they leave it behind, someone else could find it. The others don't want to go back. They've already risked everything. They escaped the underground tunnels. They were surrounded. They barely survived. Going back seems insane. But then they realize something even more important. If that final piece of evidence remains inside the house, the people responsible could still claim that everything else was fabricated. They could challenge the documents. They could discredit the witnesses. They could argue that the evidence was manipulated. The characters need the final piece. They need proof that cannot be easily denied. So despite everything, they make a decision. They're going back. Not because they want to, because they have no other choice. They turn the vehicle around. The house appears in the distance again. But this time, something is different. Smoke is rising from one of the windows. The building is burning. Someone has started a fire. The characters immediately understand what is happening. The people behind the cover-up have returned. They're trying to destroy the last remaining evidence. The group jumps out of the vehicle and runs toward the house. But the flames are spreading quickly. The entrance is already filling with smoke. They know they have only minutes. One character remembers where the final evidence may be hidden. Another stays behind to help someone who has been injured. The others rush inside. The same house that trapped them earlier is now becoming a burning building. Every second matters. They move through the smoke toward the oldest section of the property. The fire grows louder around them. Then they reach the room. The evidence is there, but someone else is standing beside it. The person who started the fire. And they are holding the final piece of the truth. The person standing in the burning room doesn't move. For a moment, the flames behind them almost make it impossible to see their face clearly. Smoke fills the room. The heat is becoming unbearable, and yet they seem strangely calm. One of the characters recognizes them immediately. It is the last person they expected to see. The person holding the evidence looks down at the papers in their hands, and then back at the group. They know exactly why everyone has come back. They know what the evidence means. And more importantly, they know what will happen if it leaves the house. The characters demand that they hand it over. The answer is simple. No. The person says that the evidence cannot be allowed to leave the property. Not because it is false, because it is true. That statement makes the situation even more disturbing. They aren't trying to destroy the evidence because it would expose a lie. They're trying to destroy it because it would expose something real. Something that could affect far more people than the characters realize. The fire grows stronger. A piece of the ceiling collapses nearby. Everyone knows they cannot stay there for long. But nobody wants to leave without the evidence. The person holding it begins explaining what happened years ago. The original incident wasn't supposed to become public. It was supposed to disappear quietly. The people involved believed that if they controlled the witnesses, destroyed the records, and changed the official story, the truth would eventually be forgotten. For years, it worked. People moved on. Lives changed. The house was abandoned. And the story became nothing more than an old tragedy that very few people remembered. But one person refused to forget. That person spent years collecting whatever evidence they could find. Every document, every photograph, every name, every record. Eventually, they discovered that the evidence had been hidden inside the house. That's why the property became so important. Not because of what people believed happened there, because of what was still hidden inside it. The characters listen as the person continues. They explain that several people tried to find the evidence before them. Some were paid to search. Others were threatened. Some simply disappeared. The house became a place where people came looking for answers and left without them. Until now, the characters finally understand why they were chosen. Each of them had a connection to someone involved in the original events. Some knew it. Some didn't. But together, their connections created the perfect opportunity to uncover the truth. The person holding the evidence says they never expected everything to go this far. They wanted the truth exposed. They didn't expect people to die. They didn't expect the house to become a battlefield. And they certainly didn't expect the evidence to be transmitted outside before they could stop it. That changes the meaning of everything. The person isn't simply the villain. They are someone who made terrible choices while trying to achieve what they believed was justice. But the characters don't accept that excuse. They argue that whatever happened in the past, innocent people were put in danger. The response is quiet. The person says that innocence is complicated. Everyone in the room has secrets. Throughout the story, people have been disappearing. People have been sacrificed. People have been abandoned because someone believed the greater goal mattered more. Now the characters have a chance to break that cycle. They work together. One person searches for another exit. Another moves debris away from a blocked doorway. Someone else carries the injured character. The person who stayed behind begins helping them. For the first time, everyone is working together without secrets between them. The house is collapsing around them. Smoke makes it difficult to breathe. The fire has reached the hallway. But they keep moving. Then they find a narrow opening behind the old wall. It leads outside. The group makes it through one by one. The last person comes out just before part of the building collapses behind them. Everyone falls silent. The house they spent the entire story trying to understand is now burning. But the evidence survived. For a moment, it seems like the nightmare is finally over. Then one character checks the recording device. The screen is damaged. They try to play it. Nothing happens. They try again. Still nothing. The device appears. Multiple copies. Different locations. Different people. Different systems. If someone tries to destroy one copy, the others will survive. For the first time, the secret cannot simply be buried again. The characters leave the property as the fire continues behind them. But as they drive away, one of them looks back through the window. The house is disappearing behind smoke. And then they notice something strange. A person is standing near the edge of the property, watching them leave. They can't see the face clearly. The vehicle continues down the road. Nobody says anything. Maybe it's just someone watching the fire. Maybe it's one of the people involved. Or maybe the story isn't finished. Because although the house is burning, the truth has already escaped. And now the people who spent years hiding that truth have a completely different problem. They have to stop the evidence before the world sees it. The drive away from the house is strangely quiet. Nobody feels like celebrating. They have escaped the fire, recovered the evidence, and finally uncovered the truth behind the mystery. But none of them knows what happens next. The person standing near the property is still on their minds. Was that someone connected to the cover-up? Was it someone who simply witnessed the fire? Or was it someone who had been watching them long before they even realized they were being followed? The characters don't have an answer. And for the first time, they understand that leaving the house doesn't necessarily mean leaving the danger behind. The person driving keeps going without stopping. They don't use the main roads. They avoid crowded areas. They don't contact anyone they don't completely trust. The evidence is divided between them, with copies stored in different places. The original recording is kept separate. If something happens to one person, the entire truth won't disappear with them. That decision gives them some protection, but it also creates a new problem. They have to decide who should receive the evidence. The obvious choice would be the authorities. But after everything they've learned, nobody feels comfortable simply handing the files over. Too many people were involved. Too many records were altered. And too many witnesses disappeared. So they begin looking for someone who has no connection to the original events. Someone outside the system. Someone who can release the evidence publicly if necessary. They eventually find a person willing to help. But before they can send the full recording, another problem appears. One of the copies has already been accessed. Someone has entered the storage account. The characters freeze. They didn't give anyone the password. That means somebody else has gained access. They immediately disconnect the device. But the damage may already be done. Someone knows where the evidence is. The question is whether they know everything. The characters check the files. Nothing appears to be missing. Then they notice one small detail. A timestamp. Someone accessed the recording only minutes earlier. That means the person watching them may not be far away. The group realizes they have to move again. They leave the location and head toward a safer place. But this time, they are not simply running. They are preparing. They finally understand that the people behind the cover-up will keep coming until the evidence becomes public. So instead of hiding the truth, they decide to release it. Not all at once. In stages. The first files contain enough information to prove that something serious happened. The next files contain names and documents. The final release will contain the recording. The goal is simple. Even if someone manages to stop one part, the rest will still come out. This creates a countdown. Once the first information is released, there is no going back. The characters know that their lives will change. People will recognize them. The story will attract attention. Their families may be questioned. Their pasts may become public. But they also know that keeping silent would allow the same people to continue controlling the story. So they make the decision. Release it. The first files go online. Nothing happens immediately. For a few seconds, the screen remains unchanged. Then the first reactions begin appearing. People are reading the documents. News organizations begin noticing the story. Questions start spreading. The names inside the files are being discussed. The story is no longer confined to one house. It's becoming public. The people who spent years hiding it suddenly have a problem they can't solve by destroying one building. The characters watch as the information spreads. For the first time, they feel like they have taken control. But that feeling doesn't last long. A message appears. Someone has sent them a warning. They know what you've released. They know where you are. And they know there is still one final piece of evidence. The recording. The characters realize that whoever sent the message has access to information that should be impossible to obtain. Someone must have been monitoring them. Maybe the person at the house. Maybe someone they trusted. Maybe someone who was never physically present but has been watching everything remotely. The warning gives them a deadline. If they release the recording, someone they care about will pay the price. Suddenly, the situation becomes personal again. The characters have to choose between exposing the truth and protecting someone innocent. One character wants to release the recording immediately. Someone they trusted. The room becomes completely silent. They look at one another. Nobody knows what to say. Because if that person was working against them all along, then the evidence they released may not be the end of the story. It may only be the beginning. And somewhere, far away from the burning house, the person in the photograph is watching the news. They see the recording being discussed. They hear the names being mentioned. Then they quietly close the screen. Because they already know something the others don't. There was one more secret inside the house. And they are the only person who knows where it went. The discovery of the photograph changes the entire mood. For the first time since leaving the house, the characters begin questioning whether they really know what happened that night. They thought they had uncovered the full truth. They thought the evidence was finally in the hands of the public. But now they realize there may have been another layer hidden from everyone. The person in the photograph was with them. They watched the house burn. They escaped with the others. They helped carry the evidence. And yet, somehow, they were connected to the person who had been watching everything. The group immediately tries to remember exactly where that person was during the most important moments. One character remembers that they disappeared briefly. Another remembers seeing them near the underground entrance. Someone else remembers that they were the one who suggested a particular route through the house. At the time, none of those details seemed important. Now they look completely different. The characters decide to find that person before they can disappear. They contact the place where they were last seen. Nobody has seen them. Their phone is switched off. Their vehicle is gone. And the location they gave the others turns out to be empty. It's almost as if they were never there. The characters know they should involve someone else. But they also know that time is running out. So they decide to investigate the location themselves. When they arrive, the building looks abandoned. There are no lights, no vehicles, no obvious signs that anyone is inside. But the key fits the front door. That is enough. They enter. Inside, the building looks like it hasn't been touched in years. Dust covers the furniture. Old newspapers are scattered across the floor. Several rooms are completely empty. Then they find a wall covered with photographs. The photographs show people connected to the original incident. Some are familiar, others are not. But there is one thing they all have in common. Every person in those photographs was somehow connected to the house. The characters realize they've found another archive. Someone has been tracking these people for years. But why? Was the person responsible collecting information to expose them? Or were they collecting information to control them? The answer becomes clearer when they find photographs of the characters themselves. Not recent photographs. Photographs taken months before they ever met. The group is stunned. Someone had been watching them long before the events at the house began. That means their involvement wasn't random. They were selected. And the person who selected them knew exactly how their lives were connected. The room suddenly feels much smaller. The characters begin searching more carefully. Behind one of the photographs, they find another note. This one contains a list of names. Several names have been crossed out. Others are marked with symbols. One name is circled. It's the name of the person they are searching for. Next to it is a date. Today's date. The characters realize they are not looking for someone who is hiding. They are looking for someone who expected them to come here. The building was prepared for them. The photographs were left for them to find. The key was left behind deliberately. And the note is a message. Before they can figure out what it means, the lights turn on. Someone is standing in the doorway. It's the person from the photograph. The same person who disappeared after the fire. They aren't surprised to see the group. In fact, they seem relieved. They say they were wondering how long it would take them to find this place. The characters demand answers. The person doesn't deny anything. Instead, they explain that the house was never the final location. It was only the first step. The real operation began somewhere else. The house contained the evidence needed to expose the original crime, but it didn't contain the entire story. The person says they knew the characters would eventually find the truth. They simply didn't know whether they would survive long enough to reach this point. The characters accuse them of betraying everyone. But the response is unexpected. They say they never betrayed them. They were protecting them. That statement makes everyone angry. Protecting them? By secretly following them? By hiding information? By helping the people who were hunting them? The person explains that there was no other way. The people behind the original cover-up were not the only danger. Someone else has been trying to uncover the truth for years. Someone who doesn't want justice. Someone who wants control. That person has been using the original mystery to build something much larger. The characters ask who it is. The answer doesn't come immediately. Instead, the person points toward another set of photographs. The images show powerful individuals, organizations, and locations connected to events across different years. The house was only one piece. The evidence released to the public exposed the original crime. But it also revealed the existence of something much bigger. Nobody speaks after the voice disappears from the phone. The words are still hanging in the room, and every person is trying to understand what they just heard. They watched the house burn. They saw parts of it collapse. They were standing outside when the fire consumed the building. And yet, someone on the phone is telling them that the house is still there. It sounds impossible. But after everything they've already discovered, nobody is willing to dismiss it as another trick. The person who brought them to the abandoned building looks genuinely confused. For the first time, they don't seem to have an answer. That is what worries everyone the most. If this person knew almost everything that had happened before, then seeing them confused means something has changed. Someone else has taken control. The characters decide to return to the property, but they don't go directly there. They first need to understand what the phone call means. They examine the number. There is no normal record attached to it. The call appears to have come from a system that shouldn't even be active anymore. That makes the situation even stranger. They search through the information they found inside the building and discover an old map of the property. At first, it looks like an ordinary architectural plan. Then one of the characters notices something unusual. The map shows two versions of the house. One is the structure everyone knows. The second appears to be underneath it. But this underground layout is much larger than the tunnels they already discovered. There are rooms marked with numbers. Several areas are crossed out, and one section is labeled with a single word: Archive. The characters realize they never reached the deepest part of the property. The underground room they found wasn't the end. It was only an entrance. The real archive may still be hidden below. That could explain why the person on the phone said the house was not gone. Perhaps the fire destroyed the upper structure while leaving the underground section intact. If so, the final secret may still be there. The group prepares to return. This time, they don't go alone. They contact someone they trust and arrange for the evidence already released to be monitored. If they disappear, the remaining files will automatically be distributed. They don't want to make the same mistake again. They want the truth to survive even if they don't. When they reach the property, the scene is completely different from what they remember. The fire is mostly out. Smoke still rises from the remains. Several sections of the house have collapsed, but one part of the structure is still standing. The oldest section, the exact area marked on the map. The characters move toward it carefully. There is no sign of anyone outside. No vehicles. No guards. No movement. It almost feels abandoned. But they know better now. They enter through the damaged side of the building. Inside, everything is blackened by smoke. Pieces of wood and glass cover the floor. The rooms they once knew are barely recognizable. But beneath the destruction, they find something. A metal door. It wasn't visible before. The fire has removed the material that was hiding it. One of the characters touches the handle. It's unlocked. They open it. A staircase leads downward. The air becomes colder as they descend. Nobody speaks. They already know what they might find. At the bottom is a long corridor. Unlike the earlier tunnels, this section looks carefully constructed. The walls are reinforced. There are old electrical systems and small cameras mounted near the ceiling. Someone built this place to remain hidden. The group moves deeper. Eventually, they reach a room with several monitors. Most are broken, but one is still active. The screen shows the house. Not the house as it looks now. The house from earlier that same night. The characters stare at the screen. They realize someone was recording everything. Their arrival, their conversations, their movements through the property, the underground discovery, the fire, everything. Then the recording changes. A different camera angle appears. It shows the characters outside after escaping the fire. And there, standing in the distance, is the same person from the photograph. The person they thought had been following them. But now they see something they didn't notice before. Another person is standing beside them. Someone else was there. The recording zooms in. The characters recognize the second person. It's someone who was supposed to be nowhere near the property. Someone they believed was helping them from outside. The realization is devastating. The person who appeared to be helping them may have been watching the entire situation from the beginning. The group immediately understands why their evidence was accessed, why their location was known, why the people hunting them always seemed one step ahead. Someone close to them was feeding information to the enemy. But there is still one question. Who? The recording doesn't show the face clearly. The camera angle changes. Then the screen goes black. A message appears. You were never meant to find this. The monitors suddenly shut down. The characters turn toward the corridor. A sound comes from behind them. Someone has entered the underground section. They don't know who it is. The footsteps slowly get closer. One character turns off the remaining lights. Everyone hides. The footsteps stop outside the room. Silence. Then the door opens. A figure enters. The characters wait. The figure walks toward the monitors. They pick up something from the desk. Then they speak. I knew you'd come back. The voice is familiar. Very familiar. One of the characters steps out. And the person standing there is someone they have trusted throughout the entire story. The betrayal finally becomes clear. But instead of running, the person simply looks at them. They say they had no choice. The characters don't want to hear that excuse again. They demand the truth. This time, the person gives it to them. They explain that the entire situation was monitored by two separate groups. One wanted the truth exposed. The other wanted the evidence destroyed. The person had been caught between them. They were ordered to watch the characters and report everything they discovered. But somewhere along the way, they changed their mind. They began secretly helping them. The characters don't know whether to believe them. Then the person reveals something that proves their story. They know about the archive. They know what is inside. And they know why the original evidence was never enough. The documents and recording prove the cover-up. But they don't prove who ultimately ordered it. That information exists in only one place. The archive. The person tells them that the archive contains records going back decades. Names, payments, orders, meetings, and evidence connecting the original crime to people who still have power today. The characters realize that what they released publicly was only the beginning. The real story is much bigger. Then the person gives them a warning. If they open the archive, they will expose people who have been protected for decades. But they will also expose people who may have nothing to do with the original crime. Families, witnesses, people who were forced to cooperate. Lives could be destroyed. The characters must decide whether knowing the truth is worth the consequences. Nobody answers immediately. Then one character walks toward the archive door. They say they didn't come this far to stop now. The others follow. The person who betrayed them watches silently. They enter the final corridor. At the end is a heavy steel door. There is no handle, only a small scanner. The person places their hand against it. The door unlocks. Inside is a room filled with shelves. Thousands of documents, boxes, hard drives, photographs. And at the center of the room is a single table. On that table is a file with their names on it. Not the names of the people involved in the old mystery. Their names. The characters slowly approach it. Someone has been recording their lives long before they ever came to the house. And now they finally understand the most disturbing truth of all. They weren't brought into the mystery because they were connected to the past. They were brought into it because someone had been planning their involvement for years.